So I figured that we would take a little intermission from the general direction of our program for this winter, as we often do during Christmas and New Year's week. Uh, Many people are off doing other things, and there's always something that's especially appropriate for this time of year. In this in this program that we are running now at the heart of everything, there are projecting into the future. I kind of see four basic building blocks or stages of the work that we can do together. And the first is providing a kind of ground or big picture of what it is we're doing, something that kind of gathers our attention to the work that we have at hand, which is a kind of conversion work, right? If we're doing our real work in the world, it's converting from any of the limitations of our operating system, which tends to be self-involved, right? And self-centered, to one that is learning how to be ready and available and open to the nature of reality unfolding right as it is in the present, which has an infinite dimension to it and liberates all those innate qualities of being that get tied up in egoistic ways, right, in our regular operating system. So there needs to be a conversion, and all the great teachers are talking about that conversion. And so in our looking at this big picture together, that's the first step is let's look at that big picture to give our perspective a way of gathering and girding our loins for the for this lifetime work. And secondly, offering some structures or some tools and aids in our gathering of the attention process, our meditation process, uh, that help us to do that conversion, to begin to support our intention to convert our attention over from the kinds of distractions and identifications that it has to being radically present. And then thirdly, seeing more deeply into or allowing to opening more deeply into the nature of reality or the heart of everything, seeing more deeply into the heart of everything, listening more deeply into the heart of everything, feeling more deeply into the heart of everything, which is the next level of attuning the attention. And then finally, only to discover that we are at the heart of everything and are the heart of everything. And with that comes a kind of responsiveness, and with that responsibility, knowing that we ourselves are the source of love that enters into this creation. And kind of radical agency that's at the same time a kind of radical surrender. So that's a summation of the whole vast spiritual process that people have been working on for millennia. And we're trying to nurse our way along that this winter. And of course, what Jesus offers us, and a lot of the work we do, of course, is very much sourced by um, Buddhist wisdom teachings. But it's really important to know that those teachings are universal, and we find them really at the heart of our Judeo-Christian tradition, and that Jesus certainly was a great representative of the Enlightenment tradition. And everything he teaches is totally consistent and supportive of all this other work that we're doing. Um, it's unfortunate that so much is literally lost in translation on every possible level, not only language wise, but when you translate Jesus from Aramaic to the Greek to the Latin to the English, so much gets lost as it moves through different cultures and moves through different agendas of the people translating and promoting. So we end up with some of the most intimate uh, teachings and terms that Jesus ends up in very, as they say in Latin, highfalutin language that really distances us from the teaching. And so it's nice to, and you, as you know, when we've touched on this before, and we're only going to really look at a kind of summary picture tonight and on Saturday. But we have, I think in the winter of 2021 into 22, we did a, a 5 or 6 week long series going into all the Beatitudes. And that's available, and eventually it'll be up on our website if anyone wants to refer to them. But we're going to look at them much more simply this week. And I think we all recognize it's important to understand that Jesus was speaking intimately with his followers and his friends, and that probably there was a kind of relationship and feeling not that different than what we share together sometimes when we're sitting in circle and there's a certain heart resonance that calls us more to be in the present, which is really the starting point for everything else, and which certainly Jesus was trying to nurture in his disciples. And I'm sure he did not kind of stand there and proclaim, "Blessed are so and so, blessed are so and so, blessed are so and so." That's what it's come down to for us. And so we need to open that up and say, what was he sharing with his disciples? What really runs through that? What's the teaching that runs through those Beatitudes that aren't just about proclaiming certain doctrines, in simple sentences, but that was really opening up and exploring an intimate path of of our humanity and of our development. So we're going to just kind of review that tonight, and then on Saturday we'll use that time to just go more deeply into meditations, going deeper into meditations around the themes that we're bringing up tonight. And I will just introduce each of the Beatitudes as we know them in the English, and then look at what they actually mean and begin to parse, you know, go deeper into them. This very phrase, Beatitudes, um, is also kind of unfortunate for us because we associate that word with beatific, right? And saintly or almost angelic. And that immediately kind of puts it, oh, these are the things to do if you want to be a saint or something, is how it almost feel. And say, okay, that's nice. I know that's there in the teaching. But it's not about that. It's about, again, something much more intimate. And this word blessed that is used continually, blessed are, blessed are, blessed are. The word that comes to us as blessed uh, is a word, uh, if I remember, Tubwehun, is it? Yeah, Tubwehun. Tubwehun. Tubwehun has a number of meanings, especially it means ripe. So these are of our recommendations for formulas, how to become ripe for your spiritual work. And it can also be translated as perfectly suited for the occasion. You see, how do we get to the point where we can really be or perfectly attuned to what it is we're trying to do? So the Beatitudes were basic points that were instructing his disciples on how to really be ripe and attuned for the spiritual work that they were setting out to do. That which is suited for its purpose would be one translated of blessed, perfectly ripe for the occasion, or that which is in timing and in tune with a deeper reality. Those are all some of the secondary meanings that reverberate in the etymology and in the Aramaic language. So how do we become ripe to attune to that divine realm of unity, right? Uh, and the first beatitude starts in a very simple and logical place that we're all very familiar with, even though it may sound a little obscure in the teaching. It says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Again, that sounds kind of doctrinal and distances from us. But let's take a look. Of course, poor in spirit could be seen as humble. Um, and certainly that humility is going to begin to make us more ripe for something new. But poor in spirit, the word lemaskene, which suggests poor, also has the echo of creating a structure or a house and a resting point or a place at which we can rest in. And what it's kind of suggesting to be poor in spirit says normally we make our house or our home in the richness of what? In all the richness, in the wealth of our attachments, right? The wealth of our ego, the wealth of our plans, the wealth of our projections, the wealth of our judgments, all the activities. That's our real wealth. I mean, it's just like it's endless wealth that we have. And it would be the hardest thing to give up, right? So to surrender that, to become poor in that, and to become poor in the spirit, to not make our home in all of those things and all that egoic structure of our life, but in a sense to make our home in the spirit, is to be poor in the spirit. And the word spirit also is really clear in Hebrew and in Aramaic. Ruach or ruha in Aramaic is the same word as the word for breath. Right? So spirit suggests the breath of God, but it's also the breath that's in us. And the Hebrews of that time would have understood that in the Semitic culture. There was a sense of that. It was very embodied that the breath of God is the breath in us. And so to make our home in the spirit is to come into this moment and to make our home in the breath, so to speak, because it's in the breath. If we drop everything else and just come to the breath, allow the breath to be with us and for us to be in the breath, is to rest with the spirit. Right? The simplicity of that. It's to rest in the present moment with the spirit of God that moves in us and to be open, right, and available. So that's, of course, the first step to becoming perfectly ripe, perfectly attuned. Uh, right. All right. So while our thoughts and our opinions and our judgments and our plans take us all over the place, coming back and resting in the breath as we all experience is the only thing that brings us right here. And this is the only place where we're going to find God, right? Or the kingdom of heaven. It's the only place. And it says, theirs will be the kingdom of heaven. And again, we can again see that in a doctrinal place. Well, if you shape up and if you do what I say, and if you pour in spirit and you submit yourself, we're going to give you heaven. You see, but it's not about all that distancing. It's about the intimacy, because if we begin to look into the teachings of Jesus and we get clues from other sources, for example, um, in the Lord's Prayer, the word that is translated as heaven, our Father who art in heaven, Devash Maya, translates in Aramaic, if you follow it back, as that which is shining out of everywhere. It's right here. We're not seeing it, right? Because we're rich in our distraction and in our agendas and in our ego. As we begin to come into the vestibule of that, of seeing by making ourselves poor, right? By emptying out and just coming into this moment, becoming poor in spirit, we're entering into a place where we become available to begin to see what in fact is here before us and what is holding us. So not only do we get a clue from that word, Devashmaya, that heaven is shining out of everywhere, but Jesus actually says in the Gospel of Thomas, which is a legitimate gospel in one of the earlier gospels, just not canonized by the church, he says to his disciples, the kingdom of heaven These are the words as it's translated into English. The kingdom of heaven is everywhere spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. Couldn't be more clear. The kingdom of God is everywhere spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it because it is that which is shining out of everywhere, right? And our consciousness is buried, right? Is contracted into the movie, you might say, through which we're projecting our every moment experience, our self-reference and our distraction. Again, all the things that we're staying rich with. So when Jesus says, give away what you have and follow me, right? It's so simple. We have to make ourselves poor. And that's not just like all right, an easy thing, because when we sit right present, as we know, intending to come into the present moment and relax and open with our breath, it's very hard to let go of that bag of gold we've been carrying around with us, that bag of gold of all the preciousness of our thoughts and attitudes and beliefs and agendas, right, and routines. To genuine to genuinely become poor is not only to momentarily, drop it or relax my attention. It's to more and more increasingly at a deep level, really surrender that, really let it go. It's not that we're going to, as Jesus says, everything that we give up, we don't lose. We're just no longer bound by it. We have now something more, a greater life in Him, a greater life in the present moment, which begins to open up into infinity. So all of this is all right there in the first beatitude or the first teaching of ripeness, right? It's not about it's becoming ripe for what we're doing. It's not about, all right, if you do this, you'll get that. Forget about getting. Be concerned about being ripe. Be concerned about being available. One of the mantras that we have used in the past, which will come up again, I think, a lot in the Beatitudes, is the one that says, let go, let be, let in, right? You have to let go of what we're carrying long enough to simply let things be as they are, not according to our projections or agendas. Let the way of things, let the way of God begin to unfold and proceed as it is always doing, and then only can we begin to let it in, right? So this is not like a one-time accomplishment. Obviously, it's a path. It's a path to ripeness. These first three Beatitudes really rest so beautifully together. And the second one, again, very related to what we've been exploring at different times over the last year or two. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. So I ask you each to take these in as I speak them in terms of their words. What are those words? Don't take them as foreign words, but say, what do these words mean for me? Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourn is an interesting word. Mourn is, it's not saying blessed are they that suffer, or blessed are they that are having a hard time, or blessed are they that are dramatizing their pain, because all of you people who are having a hard time, don't worry, I'm going to come and comfort you. All of you who are, it's not about that. It's blessed are they that mourn. Mourn is a very specific activity, right? It's a very conscious activity. It's an activity in which we gather our attention to be present for something that we're feeling deeply. So it's not just that we have pain or that we suffer, because we can act out pain in a very unconscious way, and we can use our pain to close down, right? But when we mourn, it means we're actively acknowledging both our pain and that which we are mourning for. Is another way that we're bringing ourselves and making ourselves present. Now we're making ourselves present for that which we would often push away or shut down or consider to be the barrier to our being available to something higher or something more joyous, etc. Right? Um, So the word that from mourn also in the Aramaic suggests also a deep longing for something to happen, right? A deep, again, not just an unconscious desire, but means that the heart is being turned towards something. So when we're grieving, when we're mourning, we're consciously present. We're aware of that which we are feeling and are perhaps mourning for or grieving. And there is a longing of the heart, right, for a kind of a healing, right? And we can see how those things can be very ripening, very ripening. And if we can hold, if we're consciously holding that relationship to our experience, what does it mean? You will be comforted, right? Is God just going to come along and say, "That's okay. It's all right, it's okay. You're comforted because I'm God and I'm good, and now you're comforted. So don't worry." The comfort is built into the intimacy of the process, um, and which is really suggested by again some of the etymology of this word, comfort, which is netzbeyun in Aramaic. And some of the translations of that, or the etymology, is a return from wandering, united inside by love, feeling an inner continuity, or seeing the face of that which one longs for. So let's look at those four phrases. Okay. When we mourn, what are we returning from? We may be returning from the wandering of our avoidance, or the wandering of our acting out, for example, the wandering of our shutting down. We've returned from that into the present. Uh, and we are staying present. We're gathering. We've talked about this. We've used the word coherence before. We've used the word integrity. We're gathering the parts of ourselves because we're choosing to stay present for what we're feeling. We're choosing to stay present for that which we are mourning, which means we are creating an inner continuity or integrity between those parts of ourselves, between our heart, right, our presence, our awareness, right, uh, the mourning, the grief itself. Uh, and so in creating this inner continuity, by gathering ourselves to be present in wholeness, we are becoming more, as it says, united inside by love. Right? What love? Well, first of all, it's the love that we are bringing and is being realized or gathered in our choice to be present and to hold this moment in loving presence. At the same time, we can say that presence and that love can only be God's presence and God's love. Just as his breath, that breath is our breath. That presence is our presence. That love is our love. But we're usually running away from that into distraction, avoidance, acting out. So those that mourn, this is now that we're becoming present, right? In the first beatitude, we say, let's look to, just like the Buddhist right at the beginning, he said, we have to deal with our suffering. And he taught the exact same thing. We deal with our suffering by turning towards and holding it in the context of a higher presence, a higher awareness that is not identified with a separate self story, which is where all our limited, right, round begins and ends, around and round and round, or never ends, right? We have to step outside of that to relax into a deeper, more all-embracing part of ourselves. And it's in that act that we begin to experience the comfort of the inner continuity of being united inside by love, beginning to see the face of that which we long for, which is this wholeness of presence. Uh, Again, it doesn't mean, okay, the pain is gone or the grief is gone, right? It's allowing the pain or the grief to take us into the presence of our own wholeness rather than out of it. Okay. Um, Right. We say it's the heartful tending of our own garden. Uh, Holding this mindful and heartful presence or intimacy with our own feelings that enables us to have a feeling of inner continuity and of being united inside by love. And then the third beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meek. So meek, word translated as meek also can, in the Aramaic, it means gentle or humble. Um, but this is the beautiful thing. If you look into the etymology of the Aramaic, it also connotes the idea of someone who has softened what is hard or rigid inside themselves. So I just let you rest with that for a moment. Huh? It's so beautiful. Someone who that the someone who has softened that which is rigid, right, inside. Uh, Again, it can be rigid and inside, and most of our rigidity, of course, inside, comes from trauma, including the everyday traumas of just trying to keep up with life and stress and the continual undermining of the wholeness of the heart that just wants to manifest its love and be present and whole. And it keeps discovering it can't do that and carries all kinds of shutdowns around that. And all kinds of attitudes that we build up over a lifetime, and all kinds of ways that we may be hard or rigid or skeptical or doubtful or all the ways in which that may show up. Um, so the softening again suggests a conversion of because what we're holding on to is connected to something, some idea that we're identified with, or some experience, or some defensive pattern that we're identified with. And to begin to relax that, the other side of the relaxing that is instead beginning to come into intimacy with what we're actually feeling, and consequently available in intimacy with others and that which is around us, and intimacy, right, to God or to that higher presence. Uh, and when we do this, when we can reflect that intimate, when we can relax that which has separated us, and allow that intimacy and presence. This is another case also of that mantra: let go, let be, let in. If we can begin to let go of the rigidity or the defensive patterns and begin to let everything be and let ourselves just be without defending against it, we're going to start to begin to let it in, including the richness of life that we shut out. So we begin to allow in the riches of the spirit and the riches of the earth. We can begin to inherit the earth. We can begin to inherit the fullness of life because we're not shutting it out and making ourselves separate or small. We can receive the fruits of life, of relationship. And so to turn to this tenderness to our own souls, relaxing, softening, turning to our suffering and turning with tenderness just to our own being, to our own souls, allows us to then relax and soften and turn with tenderness to others and to all those situations in life that ask that of us. And so this is the third, and therefore to surrender to God, which is also what that term implies. So these are the first three of the Beatitudes, and they form uh, a natural triumvirate, right? Because they're all about this, they're all this aspect of this process of coming into intimacy, coming into presence with this moment, letting go of what we're holding on to so that we can do that, and hence becoming available, available for what we don't know. But it's not limited by what we thought we needed to hold on to and define our lives by. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Righteousness, another one of those words with maybe conjured up all kinds of ideas. Uh, but this um, beatitude is a little bit connected to the Buddhist idea of right intention, right? To hunger and thirst after, to be directed towards, wanting to establish righteousness. And righteousness is not about, we self-righteousness on one hand or moral righteousness. Righteousness really kind of implies um, creating a foundation of harmony and justice. I mean, it's connected to justice and uh, a basis is a base upon which things can rest and begin to come into their natural stability, right? When we are resting in our righteousness, uh, in the positive sense of the word, it means we've got a ground, as we've talked in the past before, about an integrity on which we can stand and in which consequently allows us to be in a genuinely reciprocal relationship with the world around us. And in so doing, in not wobbling on our own base or being caught up in our own limited seeing, but having a nice, an open ground to stand on and coming into righteousness, it means we can see other people and situations truly, and hence truly act to on behalf of justice and to maintain harmony. Whether we're talking in terms of social justice activity or just the justice in our own lives and relationships with the people that we're with. Um, and when we do that, when we enter into that relationship with the world around us, there's a richness and a fulfillment in that and a giving back um, that allows us to be filled, is what it says, and some of the meanings of that word that's translated as filled, nishbun, also carries earthy images such as surrounded by fruit or encircled by birthing, right? As if we're allowing things to come to birth that might not have otherwise come to birth. Isn't that beautiful? And embraced by generation. That is to say, generation in the sense that things can generate and take fruit. And I also like to think of it in terms of um, being present for the generations, past and future, as in working for the seventh generation, etc. We're beginning to feel ourselves in a bigger context and be filled by that, even as we rest in our own integrity and reciprocity because of our intention uh, to do so, because it doesn't happen unconsciously. It's the point. All these things represent our highest stage of evolution, which is the capacity of this brain system that can so easily get caught up in delusion to find its way through and choose its way into greater consciousness and greater relationship, which it has the capacity to do. So these are the operating system for that process, right? These are what make us ripe for that evolution, right, of the spirit and of the self. So blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. And blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. So this is a very beautiful uh, beatitude. And I think you're each doing your own meditations on these and taking them in and internalizing them and feeling how does this nourish my own path? How does this nourish my own intention for my own path of ripeness, my own ripeness. Okay. Um, the word, the words for mercy and for merciful, Lam Raman and Ram, come from a root that meant womb, WOMB. Or the image is that of an inner birthing or an inner motion extending from the center or from our depths out from the body and radiating heat and ardor. This birthing, this giving. So that's built into the word mercy itself. Mercy is always a giving, and it's a birthing. It's not a superficial thing, or I'll let this go, kind of thing. No, it's a deep offering from ourselves or from God, who is the merciful, right? Um, and this root also has the connotations. This is also very interesting for mercy. It can mean love, compassion, and it also has the image built into it of this long drawn breath that's extending grace out, right, to others, which you may notice, of course, so much reflects or parallels the Buddhist image of Tonglen, in which our compassion work has to do with breathing in and embracing the pain of others, and then a long breath out that offers, right, a healing and support and love to them. So there's a lot of parallel there. So this is our fifth step in being ripe, is to begin to be in touch with and begin to open up our capacity to birth mercy and to birth compassion. Um, and the scholar who was doing the work on some of this quotes, the German mystic Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart has a quote. He says, "We are all meant to be the mothers of God." Okay, to be the mothers of God. So that may be a turnaround for many people, but it's absolutely true. It's always, everything is reciprocal. And Jesus makes it clear, right? When he says, "You who have fed the hungry, you who have, you know, taken in the homeless," whatever it is, when you have fed the hungry, you have fed me, right? So we are being mothers of God, or when we are mothers to each other, mothers to this moment, right? Um, God is in this moment. God is in the present moment. When we hold this present moment with that mothering care, right, and warmth and offering, we are also being mothers of God. And the Buddha said something very similar, or it might have been, now I'm trying to think, Thich Nhat Hanh said this about the Buddha. He said, the Buddha needs us as much as we need the Buddha. He depends on us because only through us can that reality come into expression, be made real, right? Can Buddhism be made real? And similarly, in the Sufi tradition, it says God is looking for a heart in which he can dwell, because otherwise he has no place to dwell. So there's a real reciprocity going on here. It's very tender, very gentle. Um, and it also echoes, we are all meant to be mothers of God. There's a beautiful quote from the ancient Tibetan master, the Lama Tsongkhapa, who we studied for a whole winter once back in 2011, and we're going to come back to. Lama Tsongkhapa, who was actually the teacher of the first Dalai Lama. He's back around that era. He says, "Bring to birth the maternal mind of totally positive intentions towards all beings as towards cherished children." Bring to birth the maternal mind. Bring to birth the maternal mind of totally positive intentions towards all beings as towards cherished children. And he goes on to say, and as part of that, we must learn to discriminate between actions which negate the preciousness of others and actions which affirm and judiciously care for others. So that is, blessed are the merciful. And then Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So again, pure in heart, this all of that we're doing here is working towards, right, opening at this purity of heart, which begins with dropping, right, all the distractions, coming into the present and resting here. And the pure in heart, in a sense, has to do with uh, our consistency in our love or in our sympathy, because there's an abundance of purpose that really directs us to be here and to begin to purify. And I love this phrase, the image that's given, an abundance of purpose like a flower blossoming because that's its true nature. And I love that image of the flower blossoming because that relates back to the other work that I'm doing, which I call the blessing way, because the word bless comes from an old Indo-European root that means to flower or to blossom or to bloom. So when we bless, is that which is helping things to come into their full flowering. So to come back to the Beatitudes, blessed are being perfectly ripe. It's being able to come into your full flowering, which then, of course, means supporting others in coming into their full flowering. That is the blessing way. And that is the essence of the sixth beatitude. Uh, Blessed are the pure in heart. Heart carries the sense of a center from which life radiates out. Okay. And they shall see God. That word see also carries a sense of inner vision or of contemplation, right? It's separating the veil as we become present and open and can see God. Um, Interestingly, it also has a little bit of an image of a lightning flash in the sky, which brings up some of the Buddhist imagery of a sudden flash of enlightenment, which happens only when minds are made still and empty through contemplation. Okay, and receptive. We have a couple of more to go. I want to rest here for a moment. Uh, I really feel you out there taking this in. I want to rest and see if there's anything that anybody want at this point that anyone wants to share what's happening for them or what their process is with this, or if you have any questions coming up that you'd like to ask about this. And we'll be looking at this, those who can come on Saturday, taking much more time to sit with this. Nothing right now. Okay. I get you to talk on Saturday. But come. Okay. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. So we have peace, we have mercy, we have righteousness, but they're all, as words, they don't tell us that much, but they're all managing to cover different subtle aspects of this greater process. So blessed are the peacemakers. The word for peace, tovde, something like that. Also, and the idea of peacemaking also conveys the image of that we're not only performing good actions, but there's a fundamental commitment to it, right? We're not just doing the right things. It's not just that we're meditating or we're acting from a place of justice, but there's a core commitment um, that is enabling you might say, the efficacy and um, the offering of peace. Uh, and it involves the peacemakers are not just waving their hand and bestowing peace. The peacemakers are doing hard work. There's an implication of hard work. Some of the images, the very earthy images connected to this phrase peacemaking, includes tilling the ground, bringing forth fruit, and then celebrating. Okay. So peacemaking also implies that which is done regularly, consistently, despite the odds, which is the theme that Jesus is going to come back to in the last, really, in the last of the Beatitudes. And it wraps right around really to the heart of his teaching, um, and has to kind of underlie everything else that he's saying. And we've worked with this before as a mantra. And really, isn't it what it's saying is persist as love despite all evidence to the contrary, or despite all resistance to the contrary. So to come into the present moment and to gather and be present for our own suffering and to mourn consciously, to bring our full feeling intimacy into the present, and at the same time to release all the other stuff that we're carrying so we can really come into the presence of the present, right? Of the spirit. Uh, Drop the rest, uh, release what is hard or rigid inside of us, bring our true intention towards this restoration of harmony and righteousness and the ability to see others from our ground of wholeness, right? To birth mercy, to have mercy radiate and compassion radiate from the center of our being, and to develop that maternal mind, Sankappa would say, and to cultivate that consistency that begins to allow the heart to really open and blossom and support the opening and the blossoming of others. Um, and to work hard to develop the commitment and to reflect that commitment that allows us to do the work of tilling the soil, and of creating peace, which also carries shlama, right? Which carries the shalom, but shlama in Aramaic, which also carries the reverberation of health, safety, mutual agreement, right? That which unifies all parties involved, all beings, uh, in a common sympathy, right? Um, and to do it, to persist in that, to work hard in that. And then finally, the last two commandments really go together. I think they are part and parcel of the same. Blessed are they who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. And this is important final counsel after he spent this time encouraging his disciples for the same reason that we say persist as love despite all evidence to the contrary. Because if we're not ready for the second half of that sentence, we're going to be naively shocked that it didn't just fall into place simply because I had a nice thought, right? Uh, whatever arises as evidence to the kind of, and I don't mean just that in a superficial way, but in a deep way. We have very deep experiences and deep reflections from the world that tell us, you know, love isn't really what's happening here. It's not the basis for everything. I'm certainly not capable of it. The world certainly doesn't deserve it. Look at the evidence everywhere, right? It's too easy to buy into those reflections. And so if we're going to do this work, we have to understand that that's a given, all those kinds of reflections, all that messaging that tells us, forget it, it's hopeless, it's not worth it, you don't deserve it, you can't do it, right? It's like the Bodhisattva vow to save all sentient beings throughout space and time. Let's see. It's a beautiful vow because, as I said, you say, well, you can't do that. You can't not do that. It goes on forever, you see. It's a matter of where you're coming from. It'll keep you well busy for a lifetime. Not being a do-gooder busybody, but opening your heart and dedicating yourself to all of being and all of life. That goes on forever. That's infinite and endless. So why not have an infinite vow, right? That undergirds us and empowers us to be all that we can be. So this is essential final counsel because the evidence to the contrary is abundant. Uh, Nothing is going to make our path easy, nothing from the outer society nor from our inner society. So when he says here, men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you, that can come from within, obviously, as well as from without. Uh, some of the uh, overlays of the word of this beatitude, when he says men will persecute you, the word persecute has the flavor of uh, it can also mean driven, can be driven, dominated, dislocated, disunited, moved by shame or moved to scandal, by scandal or shame. And so obviously all that kind of persecution, we can do that to ourselves perfectly well, being driven, dislocated, disunited, dominated, shamed. So these are the persecutions of the ego that are also reflected back in the persecutions, perhaps in the society. And so we have to understand um, that on our path of righteousness, our path of love, our path of justice, our path of peacemaking, and all the ways that this means, these are uh, these have to be also embraced and understood as a starting point, or we might even say as fuel for our practice, because it almost suggests that yeah, it says he's almost saying consider adversity as an incitement to take another step. It seems to be that message. Don't take adversity as the evidence to the contrary. Take it to say, yeah, this is the medium in which we work. And so therefore allow it to help you to become strong, because then Jesus makes reference, because all the prophets, they all had to deal with the same thing. So he's just saying, take heart, because the work that we're doing is radical work, right? Of the conversion of the nature of our experience of being and of what we can offer others. And, you know, we can go home and sometimes we just need to take a vacation. But um, it's all in the context of our work, right? And our commitment is there and we come back to it. Our intention is there, we come back to it. And our maternal mind is there and we come back to it. And he says, if also kind of implies that if the immediate environment and this is relevant to us today too, doesn't seem to be so friendly to our ideals, to our intentions. Widen your idea, your image of the environment. See your home not just as this country or this society, see your home in the universe, right? See your home in the widest context and become a citizen of that. And that's what we're working for. Uh, and ultimately, our home is in God, right? Uh, which takes us back to the beginning. For in spirit, we make our home in the spirit. We make our home in God. Uh, our home is in the awakened truth of our essential nature, manifesting as our conscious, loving presence. And I know that has to be true because it exactly turned 8 o'clock right now. So, as they say in a good recording session, oh, that's a wrap. And that's, I think, what Jesus said when he was there. "Ah, that's a wrap." Okay.
Mhm.
So, um, right. So I think that's a wrap we can take. Right. So thank you for sharing this moment with the Beatitudes. As I said, on our regular meditation time on Saturday, we will just spend more time sitting quietly with each of those and weaving that into our meditation. And then next week, we'll be looking at taking the time at the end of the year, New Year's week, to reflect on and to how to come into relationship with the past and the future, with the old year and the new, such that we don't find ourselves, as we often do, in the position of kind of being the victim of what happened last year, or of what I did wrong last year, or what I'm worried about is going to happen next year, or what I'm desperate about for next year. But how do I come back into a place of wholeness where I am, again, working from agency, working from empowerment to be all those things that Jesus speaks of, to bring my wholeness into this next year. Okay. So we'll take some time with that, and then we'll come back to our winter long work, our lifetime work. Thank you so much. And as always, we ask that the attention that we give, the heart that we give, uh, may serve and support the welfare of all beings, that all beings may be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, that all beings may have happiness and the causes of happiness, that all beings may find freedom and ease of body and mind, including ourselves, and that we may persist as love, despite all evidence to the contrary. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I'll see you maybe Saturday next week. Blessings.
Blessings.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. And please, if you show up Saturday, feel free to just share some of your process with this. How do you reflect on this and what does it bring up for you? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.